Good morning, everyone. We are the group 4. So we are going to report the prisoner who wore glasses, a short story by
Good day, ma'am. Good day, classmates. Here are the important points of our report. So let's start. Number 1. There are political prisoners who rebelled against government during the white man's supremacy. These people prisoners for being frequently assertive, speaking out against the government or protesting against the government policies. Protesting against the government policies. They are being separated from the other prisoners and kept them busy so they won't have the time to plot anything against the government. Number 2. Number 2. Brian as the leader or the head. Brian was the head of his family as he was the boogeyman and the godhead of his family. He is also the leader of the Span One. He as a father had managed his children back then, and he also manages to take charge of almost the survival of his fellow prisoners. Number 3. The Span One United. The unity shown by this group is just breathless. They can afford just any punishment given to them, who only deserve by one of them. They have endured the principle of what happens to one of us happens to all. Number 4. The intimidation between the warder and the prisoner. This is a very rare occurrence in such a cruel setting. As we can see in the normal prison setting, warders have the more oppressive side, and a warder could just rule the prisoner by his own legal liking. But in the setting, prisoners are such rude as warders. Number 5. The benefit of alliance and the strength of a powerless. In the course of the story, the Span One, which is powerless, has found their way after Bryle discovered that the warder steals fertilizer for his farm. Bryle used it not only in his advantage, but for the Span One as well. They agreed that Hanit G will be a good warder for them so that the Span One will get a good reputation, and in return, they steal fertilizers for Hanit G's farm. And that's all. Thank you.
So there are 6 main themes about the story. So number 1 is all about violence, in which it is portrayed by the Iron Club or the Nabgiri used by Hanit G to beat down Bride brutally. The next is unity of the oppressed, true shared hardship by the prisoners. And number 3 is the dehumanization of the oppressed and oppressors, in which it showcases the brutalization of the oppressors to the oppressed. And number 4 is racism, in which it shows in the story that white people often think that black people are inferior to them. Then the black people often think about white people as brutal and savage men, in which the story shows completely opposite. Then number 5 is the stereotype. The stereotype in which the white men are brutally in the eyes of the black people, and the black people are often as seen as primitive and brutal by the white people. And lastly is the change, where it shows in the story where Brian finds a way to turn the tables on Hanit G to the degree that he has Hanit G in his power. But rather than to force Hanit G to bribe him for protection, instead tells Hanit G that he wants to form an alliance, which oppositely seen as a stereotype of black people, that black people are primitive and Bryle is not one of them. So that is all.
So hello, good morning everyone. My name is Sherfalim Abdul Salam and I am going to report the characteristics analysis of the characters in the story. So first is Bryle. So Bryle is the story's protagonist and a member of Span 1. Through a physically weak, bespectacled black prisoner, he ends up winning a limited victory over the repressive prison system. He has a very poor eyesight. He is a teacher, was married, and has 12 children, but his home life was turbulent because poverty and overcrowded living quarters prompted the children to violence. Yet, despite Bryles being able to see clearly what will benefit his group, his solution is at the same time short sighted. The alliance with Bryle does not improve life for prisoners outside of Span 1 who are merely transformed into better inmates. So, si Bryle daw, siya daw ang protagonist o member po siya sa Span 1. If makita nimo siya physically, so maingon nimo nga weak siya ana kay tungod sa iyahang karang aura good niya tapos na po siya he also has a very poor eyesight. Pero despite nga poor eyesight siya og makita nimo nga physically siya karang weak, he is out of control kay dili nimo siya makontrol basta-basta good kay he has cunning manipulations og pud siya karang smart good siya, witty siya karang dali lang siya makakitag solution good sa isa ka problem. So ang manipulate niya si Hanet G which is katong warder good nga nga brutal which is describe niya as brutal kay siya ato karang gikulata siya ato ana tapos nahimo niya to buotan kay tungod na sakpan niya to siya nga gud nga nangawat og fertilizer so gigamit niya to as a way para murag niya gina-blackmail gud niya to katok kay para magbago na ang trato sa sa iyaha og sa iyahang grupo. So next is si Warder Hanet G. Brought in to subdue the out-of-control inmates of Span 1, Warder Hanet G is the antagonist of the story who undergoes a profound moral transformation. Bryle initially perceives Hanet G as frightening, simple, primitive, brutal, and not human. Beating Bryle for challenging his authority, the warder's strict authority destroys the autonomy that Span 1 had enjoyed due to its ability to float prison rules and frighten warders into submission. With eyes at the back of his head, Hanichi keeps the span in constant trouble. His surveillance reveals the inmates stealing cabbages, smoking tobacco, and private downward conversations. Hanitji failed to defend himself and his nerve broke completely. Hanitji is reborn as a good warder. He becomes a good human in broadly moral sense, as shown by his greatly improved treatment of their prisoners, even putting himself on an equality with them, working alongside them in the field. So, Warder Hanitji, siya ang nakapagbago sa Span 1 siya lang ang warder nga karang na-control gud niya ang Span 1 na pahimo niya weak ang Span 1 kay na siya karang surveillance gud na naga-steal sila mga cabbages ana so moto ang way gud niya pod para karang niya karang ginakulatan niya tong Span 1 na karang imbis na ang Span 1 good kay sila karang dali lang gud sila maka-steal og mga foods or mga tabako kay unity man gud sila so dali lang kabalo na sila unsa ang way nila ba para dali lang gud sila makakuha og mga ato nga pagkaon or kasang tabako pero tungod kay Hanit G kay unable na sila makakawat kay naa may surveillance si Hanit G na ginagunitan gud or karang pang niya ba pang defend gud niya kay kato lagi kay mao to dili na makakuha ang Span 1 og mga tapos pud karang siya lang ang warder nga sa tanan gud nga warder na nagsulod kay dili magud basta-basta ang span 1 maano kay dili magud sila guilty sa sa prison gud kay tapos si Hanit Gila ang ang warder nga nakapag sa span 1. So siya pod ang nag-beat kay Bryle. Tapos siya ang nag-beat kay Bryle, pero at the end kay nagbago siya, nag-reborn Hanit G is reborn as a good warder kay tungod nasakpan siya ni Bryle na nagkuha siya fertilizer, 5 bags of fertilizer. So mao to karang gi-betray siya ni Bryle good. Ang gibuhat ni Bryle kay di ba nasakpan siya ni Bryle na nagkuha og fertilizer. So nagsabot sila ba nga gitagaan niya si Bryle og tabako para maghilom lang daw si Bryle, pero pagkaugma ato kay gi-betray siya ni Bryle, gisumbong gyapon siya ni Bryle good nga nag-steal siya og fertilizer. Tapos gisumbong gyapon siya ni Bryle na nag-steal siya og fertilizer. Tapos mao to kay kato siya kasabot bla 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 tapos giingnan gyapon siya pero after ato nahitabo wala gyapon siya nagbago, murag gyapon siya, but the same siya ato gud gyapon, pero mas luya na gud siya, karang dili na kaayo siya gud, murag nagapaisog-isog na lang siya bisag kabalo gud siya nga ana nga unsa na nga murag napaulawan gud siya ana. Tapos blackmail gyapon siya ni Bryle nga isumbong daw gyapon niya nga si Hanit G, isumbong daw gyapon niya si Hanit G nga gitagaan siya 10 tabako para ignan siya nga dili magsaba. Tapos gikan gyapon to kay Hanit G kay gihatag gyapon to sa iyaha. So nahadlok na gud si Hanit G ato kay kasab-an naman siya ato. So nagmakaawa siya kay Bryle nga dili na isumbong kay napud siya asawa napud siya anak. Tapos mao to ang nag-deal sila ni Bryle. Ang giingon ni Bryle na dili na daw siya ni Bryle, basta ang favor niya kay magbago na siya sa sa span 1 og mahimo na siya good warder. So pagkahuman ato kay katong nag-okay na sila, ginatabangan na siya sa span 1 na magkuha og fertilizer, ginatabangan na siya sa span 1 na mangawat og fertilizer tapos ginahatag sa iyaha. Next is ang span 1. So span 1 is the work group or span to which Bryle belongs. Span 1 is comprised of 10 men and is unique in their prison camp for few reasons. They're all political prisoners grouped together to avoid the possibility of blackguard being converted to their position of the apartheid system. They have a strong sense of group identity and solidarity. Because of their assertive and unity, they are not beaten like the inmates in other spans. They generally enjoy more freedom than the other work groups until Hanit G's arrival. But due to Bryle's cunning manipulations, they get their special status back at the end of the story. In their final alliance with Hanit G, Span 1 Defiance transform into subservience as they become known as the best work span in the camp. So, ang span 1 kay grupo sila of Black Africans. Tapos daraan na belong si Bryle, tapos sila kay known sila as outstanding group. Tapos bisag kinsa nga warder kay dili gud sila ma-control kay tungod kay man gud sila, kabalo sila sa sarili ba nga wala sila gibuhat gud nga mali tapos nasulod din sila sa kulungan. Tapos tungod pero si Hanit G na ang warder, mao tong nakapagbago sa ilaha. Kay di ba dati kay dali lang sila makakuha og mga tabako, kay tungod unity man sila dali lang sila makakuha og mga pagkaon. Pero tungod kay Hanit G kay nagbago to, kay na may surveillance si Hanit G nga gapanguha sila ana. So murag dili na sila makakuha gud basta-basta og pagkaon or tabako. Tapos karang gamay lang gud nga pagkakamali kay is pwede isa sa ilaha kay ginabugbog ni Hanitji ana tapos mao to maong dili na kayo sila outstanding good. Pero before kay dili dili sila parehas sa iba nga inmates na dali lang ma-bully or makulata kay sila man gud kay wala sila gahiwalay is ano sila mag-act sila as one lang jud ba. Tapos pero at the end kay nagbalik gyapon tong pagka-outstanding nila tungod kay Bryle kay naging good warden naman si Hanit G. So that's all for my report. Thank you.
Proceed to the summary. A group of black South African political prisoners called Span 1 works on a prison's farm picking cabbages. So there are two types of prisoners. One are the moral offenders, legal offenders if they have stolen something or murdered someone. Plan to murder someone, they are called legal offenders. So they are separated, but there was another group of prisoners which are called the political prisoners. They have not done anything wrong morally, but they were there in the prison because of their political idea or political ideology. So basically, the government didn't like their political ideology, so they were put in prison. But they were quite upright and there was no guilt in them because they had not done something wrong. So they were put to work and they were called to do a lot of physical work. And there was a farm within the prison and these prisoners were asked to pick cabbages. Because of their strong sense of solidarity and lack of guilt over their political crimes, they have grown rebellious and impossible for the white guards to subdue. Because they had done nothing wrong, they were quite upright and they were rebellious and they used to talk back and used to ignore their rules. So the white guards, the one who were controlling them, the white colonials, were having a really hard time controlling them. Span 1 special status changes when a new guard or warder arrives at the prison. So what happens was the whole guard left and the new guard came. Strict and brutal to the point of inhumanity, one of Warder Haniji's first act is to severely beat a prisoner with glasses for a minor offense. So Hanaji was now in control and showed the prisoner who the boss he was. So the first thing he did was, just because of a little offense, he beat one of the prisoners who wears glasses just to tell them that if they did something wrong, the same will happen to them. In fact, he punishes the entire group. His surveillance and authority really destroys Span 1's freedom. Like he would not let them talk, would not let them eat, and would not let them sit together. So they were really under a lot of oppression here. They live in fear and suffer under Haniji's harsh treatment until the bespectacled prisoner, bespectacled somebody, which is Brill, the one who wore glasses, concocts a plan to subdue the guard. And that's all. Thank you.